Number 10. Martian Manhunter and Fire. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I am also not the biggest fan of fire either, and I would absolutely hate being set on fire for so many reasons. But for such a powerful hero who can shapeshift at a molecular level, change his entire genetic makeup to let him pass through solid objects, withstand ferocious attacks, or bend light waves around his body, it just seems a little silly, right? Not to mention that he comes from Mars, otherwise known as the Red Planet or the Fire Star. So why is this one of his biggest weaknesses? Well, long before Martian Manhunter even existed, a race of aliens known as the Burning caused some serious damage with fire in order to create their offspring, which, needless to say, people weren't too happy about. After the Guardians of the Universe separated the offspring into the White Martians and the Green Martians, they were all imbued with a congenital pyrophobia, aka a fear of fire. So it kind of makes sense why he's so afraid of it. Not only does it physically hurt him, but it also scrambles his most prized weapon of all, his mind. This fear and weakness is so intense that when he's exposed to flame, he has the capacity to self-destruct, either combusting into bits or dissolving into rivers of Martian liquid. Want to know more about the Martian Manhunter? Well then check him out in his first appearance in 1986's Justice League of America, number 255.
Up next, number 9, Defensor. The Defensor is another slightly obscure character, and he has a very obscure origin story to boot. Defensor first appeared in Marvel's Superhero Contest of Champions issue 1 in 1982. Before becoming a vigilante, he was a construction worker named Gabriel Carlo Dantes Sepulveda, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. Gabriel found an underground passageway that he snuck into after superiors at his job had gone home for the day. They had previously told him to ignore his discovery. Super stubborn though, he entered and found that the cavern contained a suit of vibranium armor connected to an unknown machine. So what did Gabriel do? Well, he put it on, of course. And as soon as he did, things went to hell. He was attacked by a group of creatures and he fought his way back to the surface, and thus began his vigilante career. His death happened off-panel in 1995, being reported in Captain America issue 442, so clearly wasn't all that important. Makes sense why he's obscure. Coming in at our next spot at number 8, Elongated Man. Ralph Dibny may be a more respected B-tier superhero these days, but that is not something you'd assume based solely off of his origin story. How did he become a superhero? He drank soda. Not even kidding here. Dibny, a young regular dude who just so happened to be obsessed with circus performers, wanted to be like the contortionists and acrobats that he so dearly admired. So he did his research and asked around, and turns out the particular performers he questioned claimed that they drank a particular kind of carbonated beverage that helped them stay in top form. That soda was a drink called Gingold. So what does our pal Ralph do? Well, he went out and bought as much Gingold as he could get his non-powered hands on, and he drank it. A lot of it. Like an unsafe amount of it. And surprise surprise, it actually worked, but gave him more than he bargained for. He had gained stretchy powers capable of elongating his body in any which way. Now you're probably thinking this story has some obvious plot holes, right? Can anyone drink a bunch of pop and be granted superpowers? Definitely not. Really, he's lucky that he didn't gain a massive amount of cavities instead.
Number 7, Monkey Business. We go now to Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, Volume 1, Issue 116 to be exact. This issue came out in 1968 and I don't think we'll ever see this on the big screen. I hope so, because if we do, I'm walking out of that big screen. The cover alone is enough. It shows Superman flying, saying, "Jimmy, what's gotten into you? Why are you acting like an ape?" And then the actual ape on the cover is like, because he's an ape, Superman, yeah, I'm the real Jimmy Olsen. We switched bodies. Yeah, they switched bodies. Apes are so strong also. Like, have you seen Planet of the Apes? Caesar just like rocks dudes off of buildings like it's no problem. There's no way he would be holding a camera. That camera would explode in his hands in a matter of seconds. Like, they're so strong. So after a malfunction of a machine, yep, they ended up switching bodies. So Jimmy Olsen's body starts, of course, literally screaming like an ape because the ape is stuck inside. And the real Jimmy Olsen, he's stuck in an ape body, and the dude, he just embraces it. He buys a green suit, he even has a cool hat to go along with it, and he continues working. Like, what a champ. He even says he'll be a simian sensation. The guy loves it. Editors, insert link. So of course somebody walks into the office and they're like, holy shit, there's a gorilla, we have to call the zoo guards right now. This can't be in here. And then Jimmy responds with puns. He's like, holy cow, I guess I'll have to explain what this monkey business is all about. Like they're gonna be like, ha, good one, Jimmy. No, like that happened in real life. That dude would be put to sleep with a dart so fast.
Up next at 6, Green Arrow. Green Arrow's initial origin story is so bad because it's laughable. And that's because it is literally a ripoff of another one of DC's more popular characters, Batman. First appearing in More Fun Comics issue 73 from 1941, DC was clearly trying to capitalize on the success of their Caped Crusader Batman by creating a similar hero. This hero was Oliver Queen. Queen was an orphan. Queen had a traumatic experience that inspired him to fight crime. Queen was a millionaire philanthropist playboy. Queen had an arrow cave and an arrow car and even a young ward. Spot the difference yet? Well, apparently Queen found himself on a deserted island one day and taught himself how to be an expert archer. This is literally the only difference between him and Bruce Wayne when you put it out on paper. Like Batman, but more Robin Hood. Luckily, Queen had become a more independent character in terms of his identity later on, having had a major overhaul and a neat little retcon in the 60s that mixed up his ideologies, ditched his millionaire background, and turned him into a liberal man fighting for the people. And at number 5, Doctor Strange strangled by his cape. For this number, we're diving into an alternate universe in the Marvel Multiverse, the Ultimate Universe, Earth 1610. This universe is categorized by significantly grittier versions of our beloved 616 heroes, and during the penultimate event in that universe, Ultimatum, many a hero and villain experience particularly brutal demises, including Dr. Stephen Strange. While fighting against Dormammu, Strange is killed in one of the most absurd ways, by his own cloak. It's a move that's never been pulled by the ruler of the Dark Dimension in the regular 616, but in the Ultimate Universe it's something that surprisingly worked. Strange is strangled by his cloak, turning his face purple until his head explodes due to all of his blood being squeezed up into his head. Needless to say, it was pretty darn gruesome. In our number 4 spot, Shauna the She-Devil. Shauna first appeared in a self-titled comic book in 1972. She is a well-trained veterinarian, an Olympic-level athlete, experienced in combat, and has extraordinary agility. She's also a highly sexually objectified character, but that is not why she landed on this list. Shauna witnessed the death of her mother. Her father murdered her mother. Yikes. She then moved from her home in Africa and came to the US to become an Olympic level athlete and a vet who specialized in raising leopard cubs. Here's where it gets really random. One of the cubs that she was raising was shot at by a zoo guard, and feeling the need to protect wildlife better, she moved back to Africa to fight poachers. That's it. It's kind of boring. Cool story. I can tell it again if you'd like.
Number 3, Superman vs. Muhammad Ali. You gotta love it. This one-shot made its debut back in 1978, written by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams. It featured the Man of Steel and, of course, Muhammad Ali. So what's going on? How is this a real thing? Well, it was part of an all-new collector's edition numbered C56. So basically, this alien named Ratlar, who is part of a species known as the Scrub, visits Earth and demands that we pick our best fighter to go against theirs. Nice. So their best fighter being a behemoth named Hunya, and if we refuse, well, the Scrub is just going to destroy the planet. So Muhammad Ali argues that since Superman isn't technically from Earth, he must be the one who fights. So Ratlar is amused by this, so he wants to know who's the best. So he pins up the two champs against each other, Superman versus Muhammad Ali. Now of course you're thinking Superman would toast this guy, hands down, no competition. Well, the fight is set to take place on Bodace, which is orbiting a red star, so that means there's no powers for Superman. So Muhammad Ali trains Superman to become a boxer, like a human boxer, and cue the Rocky Balboa music. So they start training in Superman's Fortress of Solitude, throwing proper left hooks, you know, the whole thing. Might as well train without powers, right? So the unlikely duo are given 24 hours to train, which is just unreasonable. But by using a time warping device, they're able to train for a couple of months. Ratlar figures out the device is being used and boom, training is over, boys, nice try. So the fight is broadcasted intergalactically and thousands tune in naturally. I mean, Superman puts up a good fight, but ultimately Ali is the greatest boxer to ever live. So Supes goes down. And now Ali has to fight Hunya, even predicting which round he'll go down by. Now of course Ali doesn't hold up too well against an alien at first, but he eventually knocks him out of the ring in the 4th round, just as he said. Take that, bucko. Boom!
Moving on to something even more ridiculous, in at number 2, Firebrand. The Firebrand mantle has been held by 2 individuals, siblings Rod and Danette Riley. Rod Riley was a bored, wealthy socialite who decided he would fight crime alongside his manservant, donning a very flamboyant costume that consisted of a transparent shirt and tight red pants. Now aside from being a bit of a latent queer superhero, Rod was pretty damn racist. His story had eventually been retconned, making him present at Pearl Harbor during its attack in World War II. So I guess it's justified racism? Ew. No thanks. Danette, after finding out her brother was Firebrand, would state, I quote, What a confirmed bachelor playboy like my brother needed with a bodyguard, I never understood. And even better, from the looks of these clothes, I didn't know my brother quite well as I thought I did. In other words, sweetie, your brother's gay. Speaking of, her origin was a bit more absurd than her brother's. She was studying volcanoes north of Hawaii in the 40s when she was kidnapped by a sorcerer named Wotan. When she tried to escape, Wotan hit her with a magical blast that knocked her into a pit of lava, which then gave her the power to control heat and shoot fire blasts. Which, you know, seems a little absurd because if one was to be thrown into a pit of lava, you would die pretty quickly. Wouldn't be fun. But there is magic involved, so it's fine. And finally, in our number 1 spot, The Wizard. The Wizard, aka Robert Frank, is the product of the Golden Age, having initially been published by Marvel's predecessor, Timely Comics. First debuting in US Comics issue 1 in 1941, The Wizard not only has a silly name, his origin story is almost baffling. It's that bad. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, Robert Frank was a fellow who went on a trip to Africa with his father. That was where he was bitten by a cobra. An almost fatal bite, his father saved him at the last minute with a blood transfusion from a mongoose. Why? Apparently to counteract the poison. But because of this, Robert was given super speed abilities. Later on, writers tried to make more sense of this by saying that the mongoose blood actually triggered latent metahuman abilities. Yeah. Sure, right. That makes way more sense. Totally. And that's why he fell into obscurity. Number 10, oil needed. Iron Man. Back in Iron Man's early days, his suits weren't up to par with what we're familiar with today. In Avengers issue 2, right after the team's inaugural issue, the group fights Space Phantom, who intends on invading Earth with an alien force. Phantom comes to the planet first and ends up impersonating members of the Avengers team, which causes a lot of confusion and fighting within the team. The group has caught on to Space Phantom's shtick, and Thor incapacitates him by using his weather manipulation abilities to create a rainstorm that causes Iron Man's suit to rust over. Now, to be fair, it was Space Phantom impersonating Tony Stark here, and technically he was the one to suffer the loss. But considering that he was mimicking the hero, that's a pretty bad design flaw to bring to light. Needless to say, we're glad that Tony caught on to that before any real damage occurred to the beloved hero. Up next, number 9, Batwoman as a plot device. Always a shame when a superhero, especially a female superhero, is used merely as a plot device to further the story of another character, usually a male. It's really the basis of the women in refrigerators argument. Don't know it? Google it. You should. Anyway, this was the case with the initial Batwoman, Kathy Kane. While the modern day Batwoman, Kate Kane, has gone above and beyond her former iteration, back in the day when she was created in 1956 as a means to give Batman a Batman family in the aftermath of the Comics Code Authority, and claims that Batman and Robin were gay, she was literally a fluff heroine whose utility belt included devices disguised as lipstick and compact mirrors. Yeah. When Detective Comics issue 485 came around in 1979, Kathy Kane was killed off unceremoniously, with the League of Assassins brutally murdering her. The whole story was a plot device for Batman to have a reason to go after the League of Assassins. Yikes. Moving on to number 8, Hank Pym and Pymtron. Oh, this one is sad. Hank Pym has one of the most ridiculous histories as far as Marvel characters are concerned. He has been through a lot. But most recently, we witnessed a whole new humiliating saga for Henry Pym in which he physically merged with Ultron, the robot he created in the comics that became one of the most memorable Avengers foes. During the Infinity Countdown story arc, Ultron managed to steal the Soul Gem, and a fragment of Hank's soul ended up trapped within the Stone Soul world. Now at the time the two had merged, but really it was just kind of Ultron wearing Hank's skin. While Hank was in there, he experienced an idyllic fantasy in which the Avengers had saved him and he was home reunited with his friends. In reality, a demon, the all-consuming Devondra, was busy consuming his soul. We haven't heard from him since. And it's been a little while and he might be gone forever, but probably not because comics. But even then, he'll probably be brought back and something horrible will happen to him. It's the Hank Pym way. In at number 7, we have Black Condor. There have been 3 Black Condors over the years, and all 3 haven't had great origin stories, but let's specifically look at the first, Richard Grey Jr. First appearing in Crack Comics issue 1 in 1940, Grey got his powers thanks to nuclear exposure from a radioactive meteor. Despite this, he personally believed that this wasn't actually the reason he had gotten powers. This is because he believed he was capable of flight because he had been raised as an orphan by a flock of wild condor birds in the wild. In the wilderness. Which, yes, is very, very dumb. When he did return to civilized society, he just happened upon the dead body of a senator named Thomas Wright. So he stole his identity because they shared an uncanny resemblance. How convenient. And yes, he led a double life as a senator while operating as a crime fighter. Yeah, you can see why this character has had so many different iterations. Although they never, quite got it right. In at 6, Batman punches a different Green Lantern. Long before Hal Jordan smashed his fist into the world's greatest detective's chin, Batman was on the giving end of a similar interaction. This time it was between the Caped Crusader and another Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, who is arguably the least like Green Lantern out there. 'Cause he's a bit of a dick. Anyway, this went down in the Justice League issue 5 with Batman being fed up of Guy's insufferable attitude. Batman was the one in charge of the Justice League International team and Guy was just whining all the time. Guy makes it clear that he thinks Batman shouldn't be the leader of the team, and he's constantly sulking and complaining about how he should be the one in charge instead. So what does Bats do in order to establish his dominance? Well, he knocks Guy out with one punch in front of the rest of the team. Regardless of socking Guy in the face, Batman is still all business, getting a team meeting underway as Guy lies unconscious on the floor. The best part is the reactions from the rest of the team.
Number 5, The Suicide Snare. This issue was released with Action Comics Volume 1, issue number 592, back in 1987. The cover of the issue, first of all, is enough to draw you in. It shows Superman with Big Barda, with her. They're making out, and who's in the background? Mr. Miracle, just watching the whole thing. He even says the line, "Superman and my wife?" Those lines are laid across the cover, so what's going on? Well, Mr. Miracle goes home one day to find Darkseid just chilling on his couch, immediately asking where Barda is. Darkseid gives him a tape to play, which may be the scariest moment of my life. Like if Darkseid was like, "Here's a tape," I'd be like, "No, I don't have a tape player. What did you do? What did you do? Oh god, it's gonna be so bad." So he clicks play and sees Big Barda dancing for sleaze. They don't show it, but it's implied that it's sexual in nature. I don't know why I did that. So Sleaze takes mind control Barda and Superman to an adult film director. Yeah, his name is even Grossman. Like Grossman. Grossman. His idea is that the adult film is going to make so much money that basically it can pay for an army to go against Darkseid, which is worth a shot. So in comes Mr. Miracle to save the day, releasing the two from Sleaze's mind control. Whew, that would have been a real awkward brunch if Mr. Miracle didn't show up. Quite the miracle if you ask me.
Up next, number 4, Beast Boy and the drugged envelope. The Judas Contract is by far one of the most memorable Teen Titans stories in the group's history. During this story arc, a metahuman the name of Terra joins up with the Titans. Her and Beast Boy, aka Changeling, which is what he was going by at the time, developed a bit of a romantic relationship. It's then revealed that Terra has been playing the Titans all along, and is in cahoots with one of their biggest foes, Deathstroke. During the story's climax, the sinister duo uses various methods to subdue the Titans, one of which is really embarrassing for Beast Boy. They take advantage of his vanity, sending him dozens of letters with requests for autographs from fangirls. Gar is super into this, and he gets straight to work signing pictures and licking envelopes. But turns out the glue on the envelopes has been drugged. As he realizes what's happened, he is knocked out cold. Up next, coming in our number 3 spot, we have Bouncing Boy. Oh, Bouncing Boy. Bouncing Boy is by far one of the silliest superheroes out there. He is a boy who has the power to inflate like a giant ball, and of course, bounce around. It also gives him a certain extent of invulnerability, to be fair. He first appeared in Action Comics issue 276 in 1961, and he was a part of the Legion of Superheroes. Bouncing Boy, aka Chuck Tane, is largely thought to be a character created by Jerry Siegel as a means of reflecting Siegel's interest in comedy and a desire to have a vehicle for humor on that team. So how did Chuck get his powers? Well, he was not born with them. And silly enough, he is the second individual on our list to gain powers from a beverage. No word of a lie, Chuck thought he was gulping down a delicious soda when in fact he had just consumed a super plastic formula, whatever that is. He was first rejected by the Legion, but after defeating a robber, he was accepted onto the team's roster and became the Legion's self-appointed, I quote, morale officer. Morale officer? I mean, morale, inspirer would make sense, but to be an officer is kind of seems like he's bouncing around being like, be happy, you know? Up next, number 2, Wonder Woman and Men. In Wonder Woman's earlier days, she had to endure a handful of stories in which her feminist prowess was shut down by silly plot devices. like this one. According to the Amazonian law in the Golden Age, if a man ever binded Wonder Woman's bracelets together, she would lose her powers. Seems kind of counterintuitive to her character, doesn't it? Part of this was because of her creator William M. Marston's BDSM background and influence on Wonder Woman's characters. Case in point, when this occurred, Wonder Woman has a thought bubble that reads, "When an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world." For f***ing sake. I mean, yes, it was the 40s after all. We're just glad this silly stipulation has been retconned out of existence. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Deathstroke kicks the JLA's butts. This is arguably the Justice League of America's most embarrassing failure. Potentially. In the Identity Crisis storyline, Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney, is murdered, with Dr. Light presumed to be the murderer. Over the course of the story, it becomes apparent that members of the Justice League have been in on a whole controversial mind-wiped scheme that individuals like Batman were not privy to. It's a whole lot of moral grayness, and the way Sue's rape at the hands of Dr. Light was approached is something that the story gets a lot of heat for. Spoiler alert, the JLA's response was to mind-wipe everyone who was involved. Batman was also mind-wiped in order to prevent him from making everyone take the moral high ground. Anyway, that's all context. Dr. Light, who had been mind-wiped into a literal buffoon, hired Deathstroke Slade Wilson to help protect himself from the JLA. Deathstroke takes on Green Arrow, The Flash, Zatanna, Elongated Man, Hawkman, the Atom, and Black Canary. And guess what? Deathstroke won.
Number 10. Pink Elephants. Now of course I have to start off with one of the most wild issues. It's titled Pink Elephants. It's issue 212 of Green Lantern Corps, but don't let the name fool you, there's no weird elephant stuff in this one per se. So we have Hal Jordan, and he's being eyed down by Arisia Rab. See, the only thing is, Arisia is only 13 years old. Young love, classic. Way too young though, way too young. Hal Jordan is of course not 13. So she uses her power ring to make herself appear older, but it's still not okay, you know? That's like 13 going on 30, but Hal Jordan knows that it's actually her and she's making herself look older. That's gross, that's super gross, and also super illegal. Ayo, Arisia's like, oh, I love you because you're the most handsomest man I've ever met, and because you treated me as a real Green Lantern even though I was so young, and because you couldn't keep from calling me honey. And even Hal Jordan's like, oh, okay, I didn't say, let's stop there, let's just chill. Don't say it out loud, please. Gross. Even saying it out loud here is just, yuck. Number 9, Bat Baby. Issue 147 of Batman has one of the funniest lines on a comic book title page ever. So we have Robin, just regular old Robin, and a baby sporting the mask and the cowl, and the businessman on the cover is like, look out, it's Bat Baby and Robin. Like, I love the stutter that he does too. He's like, look out, it's Bat Baby. Like, he's kind of like has to take a second to realize what he's looking at, which is kind of like us too. We're looking at the thing like, it's a Bat Baby, I guess. Yeah, debit, let's do it. And the weirdest part is, he still has the abilities of a full-grown Batman. So Batman and Robin get up close to Nails Finney and his gang, and then Batman sees Garth, the renegade scientist. Garth! Turns out Nails brought them into a trap, and now Batman has shrunk down to the size of a small child. Very small. The headlines were amazing in the news that week. Gangland turns Batman into baby, and the photo is just Batman all moody, like, it's the best. Robin at one point even has to carry Batman to the Batmobile. So what does Batman do? He embraces it. He's like, fine, I'll dress like a baby, I'll become Bat Baby, let's do it. He does well though, or he does okay rather. One of the headlines that you see next reads, Bat Baby does okay for a kid. That's it? Just okay? Like, I mean, he's okay. He just rode a balloon up in the air like 40 feet and then fought off 3 crooks, but he did okay. For a kid. He was okay for a kid. Yeah, he had to ride a balloon because his legs were so small. That's the sound I make when I'm trying to run fast. I don't think we'll ever get this comic on the big screen, but who knows? I mean, we got Scott Lang as a baby in the last Avengers. Maybe DC will really go for it and have a Bat Baby make a brief cameo. We're hoping. And number 8, Bat Witch. This one's a classic. Released in 1969, issue 186 of The World's Finest, we find Batman in a bit of an odd situation. So, Superman and Batman at this point have traveled back in time to solve a mystery of a broken bust that resembled Batman. They're like, alright, let's go back in time, figure this out. So they go back and they rescue a lady named Sylvia Ward. Now, Sylvia was actually accused of witchcraft, and she's in trouble. So Superman helps her stay afloat, and then Batman swims beside her to shore, right? What a good team. 2 nice guys, classic. And then she thanks Batman by kissing him right on the lips. Ooh-wee. And then Superman goes to introduce himself, and then Batman interrupts and takes her to the local bar. Oh shit! So Superman decides to use this era in his favor. So he dresses up as Batman and starts like floating around and doing like all like this crazy witch stuff. So much so that the town deems him a witch. So Batman is about to be burned at the stake. He's got like his hands and his head, he's stuck in the whole scenario. And then a thunderstorm rolls in and everyone's like, ah, is it raining? Can't be doing any of that. And then they leave. They don't want to see a guy dressed like a bat like get killed. They think he's a witch, but they're like, you know what? I didn't bring my umbrella, so can't do it this time. Next time. We'll get on next time. Let's head out. Everybody leaves except for, you guessed it, Ben Franklin. Yeah, he was there. He actually tried to help free Batman with one of his experiments, you know? But Superman doesn't let that happen. He puts his hand in and stops the electricity. So Ben Franklin thought that he could use electricity to like blast open the shackles. Not today, not with Supes involved. Eventually Ben Franklin's like, all right, you're on your own. I don't know what's going on here. And then when Batman asks Superman why he's doing this, Superman says, figure it out yourself. So next time your friends start flirting with your crush, just frame them for witchcraft. It'll work, trust me.
Up next, number 7, Batman punched by Hal Jordan. Batman has long disliked members of the Green Lantern Corps. It took him a very long time to be willing to trust Hal Jordan after he had become Parallax in the Emerald Twilight storyline. While Hal was possessed by the villain, he ended up going on a rampage and killing several Lanterns and Guardians. And we all know how Bruce has major trust issues. In Green Lantern Rebirth issue 6, Hal has had enough with Batman's resentment and open hostility. Hal felt he had paid his dues. He sacrificed himself to reignite the sun after he was resurrected, and he's been working real hard to prove to everyone that he is one of the good guys. Batman doesn't entirely buy it, so what does Hal do? Well, he punches him in front of a bunch of other Green Lanterns. But to be fair, Batman kinda had it coming. He's long been an to not just Hal Jordan, but to other Green Lanterns in the past. Which actually brings us to our next number.
Number 6, Orca the Whale Woman. Imagine if when Robert Pattinson's Batman came out, this was the story that we got. I would laugh so hard. So we go now to Batman issue 579. So imagine you're on a yacht, you're just chilling, right? You're hanging with your friends, having some drinks, feeling good, looking good, showing off your fancy $6 million necklace, and then bam, a whale woman just blasts into frame and rips it away. She's like, don't let her, give me that necklace. Like, first of all, so scared. Bruce is shocked. He's like, miss, can you please return that gem to its rightful owner? That'd be great, thanks. And of course the whale doesn't cooperate, so Bruce heads to the Gotham Aquarium to ask some questions. He meets Grace Baleen, who is a woman bound to a wheelchair who works at the aquarium. She gives the whole rundown on orcas and how they fight other whales that are 3 times the size of them, and how she's working on this research project with orcas, but the funding, of course, is not going well. So you probably figured out what's going on by this point. She spends her time robbing from the rich, and instead of keeping that wealth for herself, she donates it to charities. Not a bad idea. She ends up becoming an orca forever, but that doesn't last long, don't worry. She's killed by an operation ran by the Great White Shark in Detective Comics issue 819. A lot of sea drama in that one. Under the sea, we have a lot of murder, under the sea. No dancing crab choreography included.
Let's move on to another iconic DC character in at number 5, Catwoman. Oh yes, an iconic character the caliber of Catwoman can be victimized by a terribly wacky origin story just like any other hero. Selina Kyle first hit the scene in the early days of the Golden Age, appearing in Batman issue 1 from 1940, but she hadn't fully come into her own yet. During her debut, she was merely an expert thief who made use of disguises that made her appear like an innocent elderly woman. But how did she enter this glamorous life of crime and jewel thievery? Well, once upon a time, she was a flight attendant, and during one fateful flight, the plane she was working on crashed. She suffered from amnesia as a result, and upon waking, what did she do? She decided that she should start a life of crime. That's a completely rational idea, right? Yeah. Let's just be criminals. All due to her daddy dearest having owned a pet store in the past. As you can imagine, DC being the king of reboots and retcons eventually retconned this origin and replaced it with a brand new one in the 1980s after the character had made a comeback in the Silver Age.
Number 4, Super Lion. This 1958 Actions comic grabbed readers' attention in the 243rd issue when the title page showed Superman as a lion, and the headline was The Lady and the Lion. So you have to open it, you just have to. So after Superman uses his telescopic vision, he sees trouble. Trouble in the form of a young lady on a Mediterranean island in danger during an earthquake. So Superman flies over and saves the day. He soon realizes by the rubble that this is the temple of Circe. So it wasn't actually Circe, it was the next rendition of Circe. And she ends up making him consume this potion while demanding him to marry her. Nice pitch, not bad. If you do not come back to me for the antidote before the next dawn, she continues, you will turn into the creature you most resemble by nature. See, if that was me, I'd turn into like a toad or like a little turtle or something. Something just kind of like, you know, something not the best. So as fate has it, Superman becomes a lion. Yeah, his lion's heart and strength made him do the whole spiel. It could be a lot worse. Do the whole spiel. It could be a lot worse. Really dumb concept or best idea ever? I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle. Let us know in the comments. Would you see this in theaters? Superman as a lion, just like putting people's heads in his mouth? Let us know, I kind of would.
Number 3, Wasp, and that time that she fell out of a tree. Yes, this is actually a thing that happened. And yes, you probably guessed it, it happened during the Silver Age, when comics were at their wackiest. This case in particular featured Avengers member Wasp, who had escaped conflict in an exhausted state, seeking out the rest of the team Innate, because apparently back in the early days of the Avengers she wasn't overly useful. In the process, when shrunken down, she's almost eaten by a hungry little bird. But after growing in size, the tree branch that she was perched on snaps, and she falls to the ground and able to shrink down in time to save herself. So she lands on the ground and is knocked unconscious. Perhaps my favorite part of these panels is the very end, where the final panel reads, "But now we must leave the fallen Avenger as she lies silent and still in the lonely glen, for there are other urgent matters which concern us." God. Jeez. Clearly even the writers didn't care about Wasp back then. Kinda harsh, guys.
Number 2, Green Lantern and wood. If you're a bit confused, that is totally okay. This is not a weakness that is common across all of the Green Lanterns. It's specific to the very first Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Despite being armed with a magical ring and a spectrum of pretty much limitless powers, Scott seemed to have another fatal weakness other than the color yellow. He first realized that this might be a problem for him after he was hit in the face with a wooden log. And then after a series of wins and victory laps, Scott realized tree bark might be his potential undoing. Put a little more succinctly, items made of wood cannot be lifted or broken by energy from the ring, nor can barriers of emerald energy stop projectiles crafted from wood. Apparently this vulnerability to wood was because the green flame was an incarnation of green growing things, and thus could not be turned against them. Guess you could say he, can't get wood. Check out the first Green Lantern for yourself, starting with 1940s All-American Comics, number 16.
And finally coming in at number 1, the New Guardians. So back in 1988, DC had a short run with one of the best villains ever, Snowflame. So what makes Snowflame so strong and wild is cocaine. This guy even says the words, "Cocaine is my god," on the first page. The New Guardians have trouble. Of course they have trouble. His every cell burns with white hot ecstasy. In his words, not mine. Ram attacks and it doesn't do much. A blow like that would have sent an ordinary man reeling, says Snowflame. Would it be funny if he was like, a blow like that can't work against a man on blow, and it was like, and just rocked him. Yeah, he even says the more you fight back, the more you fan the fires of my high. This is a real thing. I mean, this could be a live action movie. Just like an old jack dude on coke, just boxing the Justice League.
Starting us off in at number 10, the Badger. Let's begin our list with one of the more obscure heroes to appear on our countdown today. We are talking Norbert Sykes, aka the Badger. Oh friends, it only gets worse from here. So our buddy Norbert is a Vietnam vet who was initially published by the very short-lived Capital Comics. His rights then went to a publisher called First Comics, and then after the 90s he was released by Dark Horse, Image, and IDW. So yeah, he's been around a lot. Wonder why. First appearing in a self-titled comic, Badger issue 1 in 1983, this is a character who is an expert martial artist. And, this is the best part, he can talk to animals. So, how did he get that power? Well, we should probably preface this by noting that he has multiple personality disorder, because one of his personalities believed he could talk to animals, and that personality referred to itself as the Badger. Oh, and it's also worth noting that this persona of his believed he saw God appear as a badger to him. Yeah, like I said, gets worse. Norbert escapes the mental asylum that he's in and becomes a vigilante based off of this. He's also got a ton of other personalities too, including a dog, a 9-year-old girl, a playboy, and an inner city black kid. So not only is this absurd, it's also a little bit offensive too. Now, it wasn't even the Silver Age, you guys. Oh, actually, the more racially offensive age was the Golden Age. But.
Number 9. The Flash and being too fast. At first, I've gotta say this one confused me so much because that's kind of the Flash's whole thing, right? Well, when it comes to Barry Allen, his speed might be his greatest strength, but being too fast puts his life in mortal danger. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, we see the Flash use his super speed to thwart the Anti-Monitor's evil plan, but the speed vortex he creates to stop the villain's antimatter cannon from firing is so fast that it sweeps the Flash away along with it. He ends up being stranded for 23 years in the Speed Force, you know, that mystical energy field that gives all the speedster their powers, and spends that whole time running and trying to figure out how to get back. Basically, what happened is that Barry ran way too fast for his body to handle and he atomized himself. Thought to be dead by his closest friends, including Wally West, who took up the Flash mantle in his absence, Barry's apparent death was a huge shock for everyone, and also entirely his own fault. Check out more of the Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1956's Showcase, number 4. Number 8. Power Girl and Raw Materials. You'd think that being weak to kryptonite would be their only weakness, considering how easy it seemed for people to get their hands on it. But Kara Zor-El from Earth 2 actually had another pretty big weakness at one point. They were vulnerable to unprocessed natural materials such as branches and rocks for a short while. This also includes stone, dirt, and sand. Basically anything that can be found on Earth that isn't man-made. In Peter David's Supergirl Volume 4 number 16, she gets knocked to the ground and impaled by a pretty big tree branch, which in her defense would put anyone on the ground. Supergirl helps yank out the branch, and with this weirdly sociopathic smile on her face, she asked, "What, are you vulnerable to wood?" It took a second, but after she was no longer in pain, she replied, "Worse, to any raw, unprocessed natural materials. So, sticks and stones really can break my bones." God, dumb joke and even dumber weakness. Check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, number 5.
And it's 7 Ugly John. What kind of name is this? Ugly John? What kind of rude as hell kind of rude ass name is that? I mean, sure, his only ability is having 3 faces that aren't all appealing to look at, but do you really need to put that in a name? You know what? I'm changing his name. My headcanon will forever be just John. You know what? Let's change it right now, alright? And at number 7, John. There, that's better. This guy got captured by the Wild Sentinels and was critically injured, and he was killed by Cyclops in an attempt to end his suffering. Because of the pain, or because of the faces?
Number 6. Human Torch and Asbestos. Now, don't get me wrong, Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is a force to be reckoned with. Not only can he create, absorb, and manipulate fire, which is pretty awesome on its own, but his Nova Flame is hot enough to vaporize the particles of anything in his way, whether it's a bullet, a building, a bad guy, etc. Interestingly enough though, his powers can't seem to penetrate asbestos. Now this doesn't seem like much of a weakness now, given that asbestos is now banned across most of the world, but back when the Human Torch was first created by Stan Lee and Ernest Hart in 1963, it was a much more common thing, as it was used to insulate pipes and wires, soundproof rooms, and even make cheap garden furniture. In Strange Tales number 111, Asbestos Man came into play, dialed up Johnny Storm, and arranged a showdown between the two. The Human Torch wasn't really all that into it, but he agreed nonetheless and showed up completely underprepared. Asbestos Man used his super asbestos suit, a fire retardant shield, and a fisherman's net to go toe-to-toe with the Human Torch, and he wreaked havoc on the Human Torch until he developed mesothelioma and needed an oxygen tank to stay alive. Moral of the story, kids, is always prepare for anything, and please, don't breathe asbestos. Check out more of the Human Torch's story starting with 1961's Fantastic Four, number 1.
Number 5. Organ Rearrangement. Now this is great in battle. Someone's going in for a kill shot, just relocate your heart or whatever needs to be relocated because, you know, they're coming at you. But the question is, how quickly does this happen? Is this organ teleportation, or more like the slow, progressive slog of it through your body? Can you feel it? That'd be really gross if you could. However, when else do you need this? I mean, aside from pranking purposes, terrify your friends and family. Where's your heart? How are you alive? Surprise, ma, I'm a mutant. The thing for characters who have this ability is it usually isn't brought up until absolutely necessary, so you can get a bit of Deus Ex organ rearrangement.
Number 4. Gladiator and SelfConfidence. Cal-Arc, aka Gladiator, is arguably one of the most powerful comic book heroes ever, gifted with planet-shattering strength, super speed, heat vision, frost breath, and a few psionic abilities as well. He's a superhero anyone would love to be. However, even though he is loved, he never really learned to love himself, and that is sometimes his biggest downfall. Although low self-esteem isn't exactly fun for anyone, trust me, I know, for Gladiator it's actually a fatal weakness. His power fluctuates according to his confidence, as seen in Dan Abnett's and Andy Lanning's War of Kings crossover in 2009. Get him to doubt himself or even his abilities for 1 second and he can be defeated by opponents with far weaker abilities than him. A prime example of this is shown in War of Kings number 3 when Rocket Raccoon manages to convince Gladiator his gun will hurt himself and despite withstanding far worse in the past, succumbs to self-fulfilling prophecy and is beaten. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's X-Men number 107.
Getting close to the end at number 3, Blob. Fred Duke's power manifested when he reached puberty. His major weaknesses were the same as most humans: short temper, lack of foresight, lack of intelligence, and easily manipulated self-esteem, something all humans have. He was depowered in House of M, but before this Blob's blubber was impenetrable. Even Wolverine's claws couldn't slice the dice. He's gone by the aliases of Frederick, Fatso, Tubby, Big Man, Brainless Lumox, and Horseman of Bounty. I'm not like your normal horseman. I'm a load of blubber. He's a rescue. I'm not savable.
Number 2, Ants. Yeah, Ants. Coming at you from Action Comic Volume 1, Issue 296, The Invasion of Ants. It's as dumb as it sounds, or maybe brilliant, I can't tell. The cover alone is super weird and kind of inviting. It shows Superman on the side of a building, but he's got like an ant's head. So off the bat, I'm pretty curious what the hell's going on. He's even saying the words, "Follow me, soldier ants, buzz buzz buzz, we must capture Lois Lane, buzz buzz, she will be our queen." Okay, you got it, man. So after a colony of giant ants was mutated from a nuclear war on another planet, they decided to come check out Earth. So Superman uses red kryptonite radiation to give himself an ant's head. Not a mask, important to say, like a head. He has an ant's head. He's got an ant's head, guys. And he communicates with them with that head. This is like the ultimate amalgam character. Like, Superman even explains how bad this could get if murder ants roamed the city, as if we didn't already know. It even has a photo of ants like lifting up the Empire State Building and like, so as long as Superman focuses on maintaining an ant's head, he can communicate with it. Similar to how Krypto turned into a collie. If this was a live action movie, people would light the theater on fire. There's no way he's like, buzz, buzz, buzz. Everyone's like, no, I'm leaving. You weren't ready. We're not ready for this.
Number 1, Captain Marvel Jr. and his own name. Poor Freddie Freeman. Out of all of the weaknesses on this list today, he probably drew the shortest straw because his weakness is his own name. If Captain Marvel Jr. tries to introduce himself to a superpowered ally or for some reason feels the need to say his name in the middle of a battle, he'll instantly be transformed back into Freddie Freeman, a ordinary young lad who relies on a crutch to walk. Or if he speaks his superhero alias aloud in the guise of Freddie Freeman, he'll transform into a shimmering beacon of muscly justice and give himself away. Jerry Ordway tried getting around this flaw during Captain Marvel Jr.'s sporadic appearances in Teen Titans between 1995 and 1998 by having Freeman refer to himself as CM3, since he was one of the 3 members of the Captain Marvel family at the time. Also, he could avoid accidental transformations, but that change didn't really stick around. Honestly, for someone who inspired many of Elvis's onstage looks, that is one weakness that I don't know if I can overlook. Check him out for yourself in his first DC appearance in 1995's The Power of Shazam, number 3.
Number 10, empathy. Empathic powers tend to flounder when they are on their own, hence in the superhero world you will often find them paired with other abilities. For example, while empathy may be a large part of Raven's abilities, it is not the only part. She can also influence emotion, and also her soul self and whole host of demonic abilities. All of this is cause if you just have empathic abilities, you run into the Deanna Troi situation. I'm sensing hostility, Captain. Now, knowing someone's emotional state would be an asset, but without even telepathy to back it up, you'd still be kind of guessing, like, are they mad because of what happened in your battle or negotiation, or because the store ran out of hazelnut milk? You don't know. Also, you can't just yell it out. Hold up, Titans, he's sad. It's a very I know something you don't know maybe kind of power. However, as soon as you partner up with something else, it goes up a whole other level. Number 9, immortality. Now, being immortal doesn't always have the guarantee of coming with eternal youth, or lack of pain or disease, or even not being able to die. People just assume. But what if you're immortal and just becoming a prune? Or you get sick and then you're just sick forever, living as one massive tumor. Or you can still die painfully but then get resurrected again. This one, like before, needs some kind of backup. Super strength, youth, Lazarus pits, anything. And you still need to contend with the existential dread of losing all those you care about and your connection to humanity. If you feel like you can't keep up with music after like a decade, imagine keeping up with people and trends after a century. Full-time job. Could you stay good, or do you think you'd get a little weird if you were immortal? Me? Full Louis de Pointe-Lac, cabin full of books. Life goals. Number 8. Precognition. Now, precognition sounds like a great ability. You can see the future, and then you can change it. But no, think about it. Either way, you've been Cassandra'd. So, you see the future, and you change it. Well, that means the future is fluid. So how good was your prediction in the first place? Did you change it? Would it always have changed? Or the other option, the future is inevitable. No matter what you do, you are hurtling towards that timeline. Heck, maybe even you trying to change it sets it on that path. Great. Well, what good is knowing then? It is more useful if you can change things, but then you have to live in a world of all these shifting potentialities. I guess it would also depend on how strong the ability was. Like, what if you were seeing things you couldn't exactly place, like somebody brushing their teeth, but evilly, but with no other clues? Then someone might try to steal you, and that might set off a Civil War II or a Minority Report. It's a whole thing. More trouble than it's worth.
Number 7. Adam Strange and forced deportation. Who knew that archaeologists could also be superheroes? Well, apparently Adam Strange did, because that is exactly what he is. He inadvertently found himself on the planet Ran and was gifted with all the powers of a superhero in Mystery in Space, and it's not exactly explained why. Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, what could possibly be his weakness? Well, it's not actually his fault or in his control. This life of bliss he lives on Ran is frequently interrupted by his rather inconvenient transportations back to Earth, where he has no powers at all. The technology responsible for bringing him to Ran, the Zeta Beam, only allows him to remain there for as long as it's transmitting back to Earth. And as it takes the beam a few good years to reach Strange's home planet, it's not exactly easy to catch a ride back. Strange might have been recruited as Rand's savior, but his timing issues really make this role more of a temporary gig. He could be midway through his heroics before vanishing without a single trace. He even left his wife to nearly get eaten by a tiger once. Luckily, as Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series clarified, the Iranians are more than capable of looking after themselves when Strange isn't around, and thank goodness for that, because I wouldn't be relying on Strange much either. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1986's Outsiders, number 6.
Number 6. Omniscience. So omniscience sounds great, you know everything, but it tends to freeze a person in place a bit, enraptured by all the knowledge they have, especially if they have a certain chair. To quote Batman, I am never getting out of this chair. 3 Jokers, Joe Chill, sitting next to Green Lantern on a couch construct. Hal having to give Bruce his ring to will himself out of the knowledge chair is still one of the most hilarious things ever. Also, you can kind of plan for everything if you know everything, so it also gets a bit less interesting on that front narratively as well. This is why, with rare exceptions, this tends to be a fleeting ability, and then the hero is left trying to grasp at all the straws of the knowledge they once had. Also, it tends to be shown as pushing the heroes away from their heroic natures, for knowledge is power and absolute power corrupts, absolutely.
And 5 Goldballs. Fabio Medina was a mutant whose powers manifested after the war between the Avengers and X-Men. After he was the victim of a robbery, his powers manifested, powers that include the ability to produce gold balls from any part of his body. These balls can also vary in size. They emit a poink sound every time they hit a surface and seem to be able to bounce. If that's not weird enough, it was later discovered that the balls that Fabio produces are in fact unfertilized eggs. I'm assuming human eggs because, you know, he's a human, but he's also a male, so it confuses me. He currently goes by Egg after joining the Five, where he helps Kuroko revive dead mutants. I'm assuming he's using these human eggs he produces. A giant human egg flying at you, do you know how terrifying that would be? Does it still have 32 chromosomes? Would a normal-sized swimmer be able to fertilize it? So many hard-hitting questions.
Number 4. Charisma. But charisma is not a power, you say. Some people are just charming. But in the comic book world, some people are more than charming. They may have magnetic personalities or other abilities that make them appealing to others, sometimes pheromones. The thing with this ability is it puts you in a position where you have to question their interactions, like, do these people like them because they're nice? Or is it because there's some sort of influence going on? It veers pretty far into the realm of manipulation if used that way, and far away from heroic territory. And then you end up with Star Fox. Never go full Star Fox, because essentially then you've just gone Purple Man. Just let people have baseline charisma, that's fine. Average charm can feel like a superpower anyway.
Number 3. Daredevil and loud noises. Now we all likely know this, but Matt Murdock's loss of vision took away the natural gift of eyesight that we all take for granted, and replaced it with echolocation, an uncanny radar sense that allows him to basically see things through sound. Unfortunately for many heroes, their greatest strength can also be their greatest weakness, and such is the case for Daredevil, as his extreme sensitivity to sound can completely incapacitate him. In Daredevil Volume 2 West Case Scenario, he is subjected to a high decibel ultrasound, 120 decibels to be exact, by the dastardly Purple Man, who knows his weapon is excruciating for a man of Daredevil's gift. Daredevil's head spins and he looks like a man under a sorcerer's spell, leaving him completely vulnerable to a follow-up attack. The same can actually be done using intense smells as well, since his sense of smell was also heightened after losing his eyesight. Although Daredevil can and does go toe-to-toe with pretty much anyone in a fight, he will get utterly emasculated by a stink bomb or a supersonic sound. Check out more of Matt Murdock for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Daredevil number 1.
Loud noises!
Number 2, Eyeboy. So Eyeboy is covered in eyes everywhere. You can see everything from all directions. So one would assume your brain would also be honed to accommodate this newfound skill. But also, you'd be so vulnerable. All over. So many places for people to poke. And they don't even have to come for you. You could just fall over, smushed. This, however, is a huge surveillance advantage, but you have to make sure your eye person doesn't get rushed into combat, or it could go very poorly very quickly. Now for Eyeboy, they amped up these powers, gave the poor kid a break. And he can see more than just the average human with all of these eyes. He can see things like magic and people's personalities, so it's like an extra perception on top of just having more eyes. Aura tracking, just a whole host of things. Make up for what would otherwise be just being 10-eyed man but all over your body. And number 1, niceness vibes. Feel the vibe, man. This was an ability particularly highlighted by the third Gold Star, who just wanted the universe to be a kind and decent place, which made him the arch enemy of Lobo, and the two would regularly get into dust-ups. Gold Star was even drawn to be the opposite of Lobo. He can encourage people to be nice because he emits niceness vibes, but they most certainly do not work on the main man. Gold Star would routinely get his butt handed to him because the writers did not like him and were just waiting for the day that he would kind of fade into obscurity, which isn't very nice. See, his vibes don't work at all.
In a 10 long neck. According to comments I've seen on these videos along with my own, it looks like this may be my mutant counterpart. I really don't know why you people were so obsessed with my neck when I first started, both on this channel and our sister channel, but I guess I am long neck. Before the events of M-Day, William Hanover was a mutant with a slightly longer neck than normal. He was a student at Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters and helped Cyclops oppose Zorn's rampage. You had a long neck and you were admitted to the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters? Okay. He first appeared in New X-Men number 140 in June 2003, and there is no other information about him. His power was legit having a long neck, and that's it. Kinda sad, really. I guess Candace from Phineas and Ferb should also be on this list. In a 9 skin. Angelo Espinosa was born in Los Angeles. His girlfriend became a gang member, which put a strain on their relationship, obviously. And one night his girlfriend and her friends picked up Angelo for a drive, which turned into a drive-by shooting. The stress of this event caused his powers to manifest. He passed out, and when he woke up, the car was on fire and his girlfriend was gone. A homeless man was trying to steal Angelo's wallet while he was unconscious, but Angelo woke up and fled from the car. As he did, the car exploded, killing the homeless man with the wallet on him. The only way they could identify the homeless man was by using that wallet, so Angelo was declared deceased. His power is one of the most absurd I've ever seen. Aside from sounding like a Wizards of Waverly Place spell, you know, Humanos by Espinosa. Espinosa had gained an extra 6 feet or so of skin that he can use to extend limbs like a restricted Mr. Fantastic. Skin was later found crucified on the grounds of the school along with other mutants, and despite Archangel's new healing ability, he wasn't able to save him. But like, come on, 6 feet of extra skin? That's dumb. In Innate Maggot. This one has to be the most confusing of the bunch. The kid known as Japeth, if I even said that right, was tortured by terrible stomach pains and required special food. He was told by doctors that his pains were caused by cancer, so in an effort to save his family money on medical treatment, he left his small African village at 12 years old to commit suicide. He ended up being found by Magneto, who helped him uncover the true nature of his pain. 2 slug-like creatures that lived in the boy's guts that acted like his digestive system. After Magneto got revenge for Maggot's father's death, Maggot was horrified by his actions and didn't join Magneto's cause. Sometime later, he ended up seeking out Magneto in an attempt to get him to help Maggot master his power, his slugs. He had named them Eenie and Meenie, and they work as his digestive tract, meaning he will essentially vomit them out and let them hunt. They will find food, eat it, and then return to Maggot, giving him all the nutrients from that food after he's like swallowed them back up, since Maggot cannot eat proper food on his own. Yeah, it's weird, gross, and disgusting, but oh well. That's why it deserves to be on this list.
Number 7, color manipulation. So when we're talking about this, we're talking mostly about the color kid, who can change the color of any object at will. Now, cool for your career as an interior decorator extraordinaire, but for your crime-fighting career, less so. So this character once used this to mask a MacGuffin so that the villain couldn't find it. But I mean, this is a stopgap measure. He also tripped someone, because he blended an object into the floor. So distraction at best, annoyance at worst. Now you could work this, but you'd have to be one think on your toes color manipulator. So many other careers. Children's entertainer, that would be another good one. Teach the young ones all about mixing colors.
And at 6, Glob Herman. Look, trained mercenaries or villains know where to shoot or stab you. Some trained individuals know where to stab you to make it look like you're dead but not actually kill you. But it's a general rule of thumb, you know, shoot to kill, aim to thrill, or aim for the head and right in the chest. Well, what if you had transparent skin so the villains knew exactly where to put each bullet or knife to avoid your bones? Well, there you have Glob Herman's power. His real name being Robert Herman, he probably took one of those memes that's like your stripper name is the color of your shirt and the last dessert you ate, but it was like your superhero name is the last thing you wrote on backwards plus your last name. And boom! Blog backwards Herman was born. Blog backwards is Glob, so.
Number 5, Wonder Woman and being tied up. Superheroes don't come much more kick than Wonder Woman. She's an extremely skilled warrior with enough power to take on the gods and win, and she's shown time and time again that she can hold her own in the world of comic book heroes. However, the Golden Age Wonder Woman was bound by an interesting Amazonian rule that really did not work in her favor. Known as Aphrodite's Law, it states that when an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world. This gender-specific weakness lasted from Wonder Woman's debut in 1942 right through to the mid-80s, when DC finally retconned this out for good. This weakness is less literal than metaphorical, meant to demonstrate Marston's argument that women are only vulnerable to men when they choose to be. But still, I am very glad that this was gotten rid of for good. Check out Wonder Woman more for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1942's All-Star Comics, Volume 1, Number 8.
And at 4, Zeitgeist. Look, puking is never fun, especially not after binge drinking. But while it may feel like acid in your throat, the stomach acid doesn't really burn through any non-organic material. Well, imagine vomit that may actually end up being able to digest corn. Well, let me introduce you to Zeitgeist, the most common mutant right now because he looks like he's wearing a surgical mask and we all need to be wearing one right now. He would have nightmares about a makeout session gone wrong after he ended up spewing acid vomit on a girl's face during a drunken day at the beach. Yikes, that'll definitely be a downer on your first date. She survived, but the face burn left Axel Clooney wondering if the nightmares would stop if he remembered her name. You ain't remembering her name, buddy. While sure, he may have been the leader of the Ecstatics, this is still such a dumb power to have. When I saw the guy with acid spit in Sky High get classified as a hero, I'm like, what the f***, why? How is acid spit a heroic ability? Sure, super strength, I get it, but acid spit? It's more of a hero support power. This also goes to show that nobody other than the public cares about damages superheroes cause. He literally started burning through the school and he's like, hero!
Number 3, Power Rings. Now the Power Ring is a fantastic weapon, and one that is immensely powerful. I mean, with it the limits are literally only one's imagination. However, sometimes the constructs can get a little silly. People creating whole trains and cars around themselves and the like. Plus, without the rings, not all the lanterns have backups, not even some extra martial arts training. Simon Baz carried a gun for a bit, but that didn't go over well. Also, a couple of issues into having it, he shot and killed Sinestro. Thankfully they were already in the realm of the undead, so it didn't have a permanent effect. But still, he would eventually be convinced he didn't need it. Kyle has some crazy constructs because he's an artist. So the idea is that he would naturally have these really intricate designs because of his artistic nature. Okay, tell me that during a hostage situation under hostile fire. Really cool weapons, not always used to the best of their abilities.
Innate 2 Choir. Irena Clayton is one of the students at the Xavier Institute who assisted then-acting headmistress Jean Grey fight against the invading force of Sublime's U-Men. She first appeared in New X-Men number 112 and had her final appearance in the New X-Men number 150, being depowered due to M-Day. During her 3 years as a mutant, she had not 1, not 2, but 3 extra mouths on her neck. These powers enabled her to become the superhero version of Jeff Dunham, using these mouths to talk without moving her lips, thus confusing and disorienting her enemies. Having extra mouths on your neck? Are you kidding me? Confusing your enemies by talking without moving your lips. Really? That's freaking ridiculous. Like, how? Finally, in at number 1, Jazz. There is little to say about Jazz's mutant ability. His superpower, thanks to his mutation, is that he is blue. Yep. John Xander's dream was to be a rapper, but he wasn't very good. While in Mutant Town, he was a drug owner for one of the local crime lords who was selling toad juice, a drug made from the secretions of a mutant called Toad Boy. Even Toad Boy is more useful than Jazz. His only ability other than being blue is his ability to rap at a mediocre level. Same. This guy is nothing special, but what makes me mad about all of this is, and it should make you mad too, is the fact that he kept his powers after M-Day. Yeah, the mutant tag who can decide elections with one handshake loses his powers because he isn't useful enough, but the blue-skinned Eminem ripoff is able to keep his powers? No, not even powers, blue skin. He's probably as mad as I am about it, and you should be mad about it too. If he knows about it, that is.